A young billionaire who is infertile finds a girl in a wheelchair crying at the grave of his ex-wife. She hands him a letter and says, "My mom wrote this for you." He starts reading and whispers, "This is impossible. I'm infertile." He freezes and begins to cry. Evening was falling when Theo Wilder parked his black Mercedes at Valley Gardens Cemetery. 5 years. Today made exactly 5 years. The heavy clouds matched his mood, dark, somber, inevitable. He straightened his tie out of habit, not need. Everything about Theo was meticulously calculated. The tailored Italian suit, the Patek Philippe watch, even the way he styled his dark brown hair that, at 34, already showed a few grey strands at the temples. Once a year, he allowed himself this moment of weakness, a visit, a silent acknowledgement. He picked up the bouquet of white lilies from the passenger seat. The scent hit his nose, sweet, pure, fleeting. Lara had always preferred lilies. As he walked among the rows of headstones and funerary statues, Theo checked his watch. 5:30 in the afternoon. In an hour, he'd be back at the office for a video conference with investors in Tokyo. Life didn't stop, not even on this day. Lara's grave was beneath an old oak tree. Simple, elegant, like her. Theo took a deep breath, preparing himself for the moment. 5 years, and it still hurt. Not in the same shattering way as before, but like a scar that never truly fades. That's when he noticed something different. Someone was there, a small figure near the headstone. Theo frowned. In 5 years, he had never encountered another person at that spot. Lara's few relatives lived far away, and friends, well, their marriage had driven many away. As he drew closer, the figure became clearer. A child. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7, sitting in a wheelchair. Her light brown hair was braided into 2 uneven pigtails. She wore a pale blue coat that seemed too big for her. The girl didn't notice him at first. She was focused on Lara's photo on the headstone. She held a white envelope in one hand and in the other, a small bouquet of pink roses. She was speaking softly to the picture, as if sharing a secret. Theo cleared his throat gently. The girl turned, startled. It was like a punch to the stomach. The eyes, they were exactly Lara's eyes, big, expressive, an emerald green Theo knew so well, a green that haunted him in dreams. "I'm sorry," Theo said, recovering from the shock. "I didn't mean to scare you." The girl studied him for a moment. Her small, delicate face held a serious, almost grown-up expression. "You're Theo," she said. It wasn't a question. The lawyer felt a chill run down his spine. How did this child know his name? "Yes," he replied cautiously. "And you are—" The girl adjusted herself in the wheelchair. "My name is Ava," she said, her voice clear and firm, surprisingly confident for someone so little. "Ava Matthews." Matthews, Lara's maiden name. Theo felt his throat tighten. "You knew my ex-wife?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Ava looked at the photo on the headstone, then back at Theo. Her eyes, those intense green eyes, seemed to see right through him. "She was my mum," she answered simply. Theo's world stopped. The words echoed in his mind like a gong. "My mum, my mom." The air felt heavy, hard to breathe. "Your mom," he repeated, the words coming out with difficulty. Ava nodded. No drama, no tears, just a child stating a fact. "She asked me to give this to you," Ava continued, extending the white envelope toward him. "When I was ready, Grandma Helen said now is the time." Theo looked at the envelope as if it were a bomb about to go off. His name was written on the front, in Lara's elegant, slanted handwriting. With trembling fingers, he took the envelope. Who's here with you?" "Did you come alone?" Ava pointed to an older woman waiting a few yards away, near a stone bench. A woman Theo hadn't noticed before, Helen Matthews, Lara's mother. She waved discreetly, but didn't come any closer. "Grandma brought me," Ava explained. "She said it was important." Theo opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a carefully folded sheet of paper. The same elegant handwriting, the same essence of Lara. "Theo, if you're reading this, I'm no longer there, and it means Ava, our daughter, is ready to meet you. Yes, Our daughter, I know what you're thinking now, that it's impossible, that life robbed you of your chance to be a father long before we met. I used to think that too. But miracles happen, even to those who don't believe in them. I found out I was pregnant 3 months after our divorce. The doctors couldn't explain how. They called it a rare case, one of those exceptions that defy science. I didn't tell you because you were moving on, because you always said you didn't want children, even before you found out you couldn't have them. Because I thought it would be easier this way. I was wrong. Ava deserves to know her father, and you deserve to meet the amazing daughter you have. Forgive me for hiding this from you. I hope one day you'll understand. With love, Lara. The paper trembled in Theo's hands. His eyes burned, his vision blurry. A tear fell, then another. Soon his face was wet, the tears falling freely from his usually controlled expression. It was the first time he had cried since Lara's funeral. He looked at the girl, at Ava, who watched him curiously. "Did you read it?" she asked. Theo nodded, trying to regain control, but he couldn't stop his chin from trembling. "You're my dad," Ava said, just as directly as before. There was no accusation in her voice, no anger, just the simple truth of a child. Theo felt his world spin. It was impossible, completely impossible. The doctors had always been clear. His condition was irreversible. This can't be true," he murmured, more to himself than to the girl. "I'm infertile. Since I was 16. A fever, a complication." Ava tilted her head, as if trying to solve a difficult puzzle. "Mom said I'm a miracle," she replied simply, extending the pink roses toward him. Theo looked at the flowers, at the letter, at the child, her green eyes, the shape of her chin, the slight furrow of her brow when she was focused exactly like him. "This is impossible," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I'm infertile." But there she was, a small and fragile girl in a wheelchair, with his ex-wife's eyes and his own jawline, offering him roses and a truth that destroyed everything he thought he knew about his life. Theo Wilder's perfectly ordered and controlled world had just come crashing down. Helen Matthews's house was in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of the city, a modest 2-story building with light-toned walls and white-framed windows. The front yard was small but well kept, with rows of roses along a low wall. A newly installed access ramp replaced the 3 steps leading to the entrance, its wood still unmarked by frequent use. Theo stopped his Mercedes at the curb in front of the house, turned off the engine, and stayed seated. His hands still gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white with the pressure. It had been 3 days since the cemetery encounter. 3 days of sleepless nights, muddled thoughts, and endless questions. 3 days spent reviewing old medical records that confirmed his condition, infertility. A definite diagnosis since he was 16, the result of a complicated rheumatic fever. Doctors had been clear, practically 0 chance of natural conception. It was a sentence he had silently carried all his adult life. His assistant had to reschedule all his meetings for the week. The partners at the firm received a vague message about urgent personal matters. For the first time in years, Theo Wilder, the man who built a legal empire from scratch, was paralyzed. "Stop stalling," he muttered to himself, finally getting out of the car. The crisp morning air did little to calm his racing heart. Every step toward the front door felt weighted by the envelope inside his suit jacket pocket. Lara's letter, read and reread dozens of times in the past few days. He hesitated for a moment before ringing the doorbell. The sound echoed inside the house, followed by the soft shuffle of approaching footsteps. The door opened. "You came," Helen Matthews said. There was no surprise in her voice, only a resigned calm. "I knew you would." The woman Theo had met years ago had aged considerably. Her hair, once brown like Lara's, was now entirely white, pinned in a simple bun at the nape of her neck. The wrinkles around her eyes and mouth were deeper, marks of joys and sorrows lived. But her gaze, that direct, penetrating gaze, was the same. "I need answers," Theo said simply, skipping greetings. Helen nodded and opened the door wider. "She's still asleep. She had a restless night." She cast a brief glance at the clock on the wall. "We can talk in the kitchen." Theo entered, feeling oddly out of place. The interior was cozy, with simple, well-cared-for furniture. The living room walls were covered in framed photographs, a stark contrast to the minimalist spaces he was used to. His gaze was immediately drawn to a large photo above the fireplace, Lara smiling, holding a baby in her arms. The newborn was wrapped in a yellow blanket, only the tiny face visible, eyes closed in sleep. Lara looked at the camera with an expression Theo had never seen before, a mix of exhaustion and absolute joy. His heart skipped a beat. That was Ava, his daughter. Maybe. The possibility still seemed surreal. The kitchen was small but welcoming. A round dark wood table in the center with 4 chairs. Yellow curtains filtered the light through the windows. On the fridge, held by colorful magnets, was a child's drawing of a brown-haired girl and a tall man in a suit, both smiling, with a big red heart between them. Helen noticed his fixed stare on the drawing and commented while making coffee. "She drew that last night. Said she dreamed about you." Theo looked away, suddenly uncomfortable. The thought that a child who barely knew him might dream of him, think of him as a father, was unsettling. Helen made the coffee in silence, her motions precise and familiar. Theo sat, watching the older woman. When she finally placed a steaming cup in front of him and sat on the other side of the table, the silence became too heavy. "Is it true?" he asked, without beating around the bush. Helen looked him straight in the eyes. "Yes. Ava is your biological daughter." Theo shook his head slowly. "Impossible. I have medical reports dating back to when I was 16. The fever I had, the doctors were clear, almost no chance." "Almost no chance is not the same as impossible," Helen replied calmly. "And yet, here she is. Lara found out she was pregnant 3 months after the divorce. She was as shocked as you are now." Theo's hand tightened around the coffee cup. "Why didn't she tell me?" "It was my right to know." "Keep your voice down," Helen warned, glancing toward the hallway. "I don't want Ava waking up to shouting." Theo took a deep breath, trying to control the anger rising in his chest. "Why didn't she tell me?" he repeated, quieter but no less intense. Helen sighed deeply, running her fingers along the rim of her own cup. "You two were already separated, Theo. The divorce had been difficult." "Difficult?" Theo let out a humorless laugh. "It was hell, but that doesn't justify hiding my daughter from me." "Lara had her reasons," Helen said, her tone firmer. "You always made it clear you didn't want children." "That was before I found out I couldn't have them. Even after. Lara told me about the night you got the final test results. She said you seemed almost relieved." The memory hit Theo like a punch. He had been 25 when he finally decided to investigate why they had never conceived, despite years without protection. The confirmation of infertility came as a final verdict. He remembered telling Lara, in the bedroom of the apartment they shared, "Well, at least now we know we never have to worry about that." Back then, he thought he was being strong, practical. It wasn't relief, it was defense, a way to hide the pain. But Lara had interpreted it differently. "She was wrong," he murmured, more to himself than to Helen. There was a moment of silence. Helen held her coffee cup with both hands, as if seeking warmth even though the morning was already warm. When she discovered the pregnancy, Lara was confused, scared. She saw 3 different doctors. They all said the same thing. It was one of those rare, almost impossible cases. 1 in a million. She paused, taking a sip of coffee before continuing. "She considered telling you. She called your office twice. The first time, your secretary said you were in an important meeting. The second time, you were traveling to Tokyo or Hong Kong, I don't quite remember. She should have insisted," Theo countered. "Something this big. Then came the news about your new case, that big lawsuit against a pharmaceutical corporation. It was in all the papers, the young prodigy lawyer who can bring down a giant. Lara saw the interviews, the photos. You were in your element, at your peak." Theo remembered that case well. It was his first truly major one, the one that put his name on the map. He worked almost 20 hours a day for 6 months. It was the case that built his reputation and probably destroyed his marriage, though he hadn't realized it at the time. And still, she chose not to tell me. Initially, yes, she thought you weren't ready, that you didn't want the responsibility, that it would be a burden for you. Theo felt a surge of anger in his chest. A burden? My own daughter? You were building your empire, Theo. You worked 18-hour days. It was one of the reasons for the divorce, remember? Married to a ghost, she used to say. The words hurt because they were true. In the last years of their marriage, Theo rarely came home. When he did, he brought work. Lara had begged for attention, for time, for connection. He always promised things would be different after the next big case. But there was always a next big case, always another mountain to climb. And then, he asked quietly, when Ava was born, as she grew up, Helen stood up and went to a drawer near the sink. She returned with a thick envelope, yellowed by time. Lara wrote to you many times, letters she never sent. She pushed the envelope toward him. Sometimes, she even drove to your office with Ava in the car. She'd sit there, watching from a distance. She never had the courage to go in. Theo took the envelope with trembling hands. It was heavy, packed with unsent letters, years of unshared thoughts. Why? Fear, mostly. Fear you'd reject Ava, or worse, that you'd accept her out of obligation, not out of love. Helen paused, looking at her own hands. Then she got sick. The cancer advanced too fast. Theo felt a lump in his throat. Lara was only 32 when she died. So young. And the accident. Ava mentioned an accident. Helen's expression changed, turning somber. An old pain reflected in her eyes. They were coming back from the hospital after a chemotherapy session. A drunk driver ran a red light. Lara saw the car coming, tried to swerve, but she took a deep breath. She tried to shield Ava with her own body. Her voice faltered. She saved Ava's life, but Ava lost the use of her legs. Lara never fully recovered. The cancer, the injuries from the accident, it was too much. Theo closed his eyes, trying to process it all. He pictured Lara, alone, battling cancer, caring for a small paraplegic child. Without him, because he didn't know, because she never told him. In her final months, Helen continued, discreetly wiping away a tear, Lara realized she'd made a mistake, that Ava needed a father, that you had the right to know her. She pointed to the envelope. It's all there. The medical records that prove the pregnancy, photos of her early years, along with DNA test results Lara did before she died. DNA tests? She knew you'd doubt, that you'd need proof. Helen gave a sad smile. My daughter knew you well, Theo. Before he could reply, they heard a sound from the hallway, the soft noise of wheels on the wooden floor. Ava appeared at the kitchen door, still in pajamas, a blue cotton set with little white stars. Her hair was messy, her face marked with pillow creases. You came back, she said, looking at Theo with those bright green eyes, Lara's eyes. Theo felt something shift inside him, something that had been dormant for a long time. I did, he answered simply. Ava smiled, a small, shy smile that lit up her entire face. Do you want to see my drawings? Helen stood up. Ava, honey, breakfast first, then the drawings. Ava made a face but didn't argue. Helen began preparing her breakfast. Toast, orange juice, an apple sliced into wedges. Can I have coffee like you? Ava asked, glancing at Theo's cup. When you're 18, Helen responded automatically, as though they'd had this conversation many times. Ava gave a dramatic sigh. That'll take forever. Theo couldn't suppress a small smile. The girl had personality. As Helen placed Ava's breakfast on the table, Theo felt a hand on his arm. Helen was looking at him intently. Don't do this unless you're sure, she whispered, so only he could hear. She's lost too much already. Don't come into her life just to leave again. Theo understood the warning. He looked at Ava, who was nibbling on toast, watching them curiously, and then at the envelope in his hands. I need to be certain, he finally said. I need my own DNA test. Helen nodded, as though she had expected it. Understandable. I can arrange it. Ava tilted her head, confused about the adult's conversation. "Are you talking about me?" she asked, her mouth full of toast. "Ava, don't talk with your mouth full," Helen scolded gently. The girl swallowed quickly. "Sorry, Grandma, but you are talking about me, aren't you?" Theo got up and walked over to her, kneeling so he was at her eye level. Up close, the similarities were even more striking. The shape of her nose, the line of her jaw, even the little frown when she was confused, gestures he saw in the mirror every day. "Yes," he answered honestly. "We're talking about you and about me and about a lot of complicated things that happened before you were born. Grown-up stuff," she said with a wisdom beyond her years. "Exactly." Theo couldn't help a small smile. "But I promise I'll come back to see your drawings." "Pinky promise?" Ava extended her little finger toward him, looking expectant. Theo hesitated for a moment, then hooked his finger with hers. "Pinky promise." The smile Ava gave him felt like a ray of sunshine after a storm. Va comme voir. A week later, Theo sat in his office on the 40th floor of a mirrored glass building in the city center. The place that had always been his sanctuary, his center of power, felt different now. Colder. Emptier. The afternoon sun filtered through the windows, casting bright patterns on the dark marble floor. On the tempered glass desk, perfectly organized as always, was a white envelope. The lab's logo was printed in the upper corner. His name appeared in neat, formal letters. The DNA test results. He had spent the entire week in a state of suspension. He couldn't work, couldn't sleep, barely ate. His mind was torn between the possibility of having a daughter, something he had always considered impossible, and the fear of raising his hopes only to find out it was all a mistake. He had visited Ava twice that week. He saw her drawings. He listened to her stories. He discovered she loved books about dinosaurs and hated peas. That she wanted to be either an astronaut or a vet, I haven't decided yet. That she knew all the capitals of Europe because she had a puzzle of the world map. Every minute with her made it harder to imagine she might not be his daughter. His fingers touched the envelope, hesitant. Part of him didn't want to open it. Uncertainty, at least, allowed him to dream. Finally, he tore it open. His eyes quickly scanned the pages of technical terms, looking for the conclusion. When he found it, he had to read it 3 times to process the words. Probability of paternity, 99.99998%. The room began to spin. Theo let the paper fall onto the desk and covered his face with his hands. His whole body began to shake as emotions burst out all at once. Ava was his daughter, his biological daughter. The miracle every doctor had said could never happen. For the first time in years, maybe the first time since childhood, Theo Wilder cried openly. Deep sobs that came from a place buried long ago. He cried for all the lies he'd believed about himself. He cried for the lost time, for the first steps he never saw, the first words he never heard, the birthdays he never celebrated. He cried for Lara, who had faced it all alone when she didn't have to. He was so absorbed in his sorrow that he didn't hear the door open. He only realized he wasn't alone when he felt a hand on his shoulder. Rachel, his assistant for 8 years, looked at him with concern. In all that time, she had never seen him like this. No one had... "Mr. Wilder, are you all right?" Theo wiped his eyes quickly, but it was too late to hide the tears. "Cancel all my appointments for the rest of this week," he said, his voice still choked up. "And for next week, too." Rachel looked at him, then at the paper on the desk, then back at him. She nodded slowly. "Yes, sir." When the door closed, Theo remained still for a long time. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the office. Finally, he picked up the phone and dialed Helen's number. "She's my daughter," he said as soon as she answered. There was no need for explanations. "I know," Helen replied softly. "Can I come over tomorrow?" I need to see her. She'll be happy. She's talked about you every day." When he hung up, Theo walked to the window. The city stretched below him, millions of lives, millions of stories. And somewhere in that sea of lights was a little green-eyed girl who had changed everything. What once seemed impossible was now breathing right before him. The future had completely transformed in a single moment. He had a daughter, and nothing else mattered. Theo's routine changed completely in the following weeks. Meetings now ended promptly at 5 in the afternoon. His driver already knew the route, 20 minutes from downtown to the quiet neighborhood where Ava and Helen lived. At first, the visits were short, almost formal. Theo arrived with gifts, books about dinosaurs, solar system puzzles, a small telescope. Ava received each one with sparkling, curious eyes, but Theo realized she valued his presence more than any object. "You don't need to bring presents every time," Helen remarked one afternoon, watching Ava play in the garden with a set of toy animals he had brought. "I don't know what else to do," he confessed. "I have so much time to make up for." "Time," Helen smiled gently. "That's exactly what she needs. Not things, just time." He took the advice to heart. On the next visit, he arrived empty-handed but with the entire afternoon free. Together, he and Ava assembled a 1,000-piece puzzle, a picture of the Milky Way. It took hours. At some point, Theo noticed night had already fallen outside, and he hadn't checked his phone even once. "Can I ask you something?" Ava said, concentrating on fitting a particularly tricky piece. "Sure." "Did you and my mom like each other a lot?" The question caught him off guard. "Yes," he answered after a moment. "We liked each other very much. Then why did you separate?" Theo took a deep breath. How to explain divorce to a 6-year-old, how to talk about emotional distance, different priorities, prolonged absences. "Sometimes," he began slowly, "two people can like each other a lot but can't make it work. Like puzzle pieces that look like they fit but don't." Ava nodded, as if it made perfect sense. "Like this blue piece that looks like it belongs in the sky but actually goes somewhere else." "Exactly." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Mom talked about you." Theo's heart sped up. "Really? What did she say?" "That you were very smart. And you worked really hard to help people, and that sometimes you had sad eyes." She looked at him, like now. Across the room, Helen watched silently, knitting what looked like a scarf. Her eyes, so much like Lara's, held a mix of tenderness and concern. The visits became more frequent, 2-3 times a week. Theo rearranged his schedule, delegated cases, and shocked his partners by requesting leave. For someone who had always put work above everything, it was a remarkable transformation. One sunny Saturday, he took Ava to the park. Logistics he had never considered came up, checking wheelchair-accessible paths, ensuring there were adapted restrooms, loading and unloading the wheelchair. But it was all worth it when he saw her joy feeding the ducks by the pond. "Mom used to bring me here," Ava said, throwing small pieces of bread to the eager ducks. "She knew the names of all the different birds." "Really?" Theo smiled. "Which ones did she teach you?" Ava pointed at different birds around the pond, naming each one. "That one's a sparrow, that one's a robin, and the tall one with the long neck is a heron." She paused. "Mom said birds are like little angels, sky spies." Theo felt a lump in his throat. That was exactly the kind of thing Lara would say. Poetic, imaginative, filled with magic. "Your mom was very special," he managed to say. "I know," Ava replied simply. "She's in heaven now, but she still takes care of me." Then, with the disconcerting ease children have, she changed the subject. "Can we get ice cream?" In the weeks that followed, Theo discovered a new world through Ava's eyes. The city he'd known for years looked different now, full of details he had never noticed before. The chalk drawings on the sidewalk, the balloon vendor in the square, the shapes of clouds Ava insisted looked like exotic animals. More surprising than anything was how he felt after each visit. Tired, yes, but a different kind of tired than from work. It was a good tired, satisfying, complete. "Are you getting attached to her?" Helen commented one evening, while Theo waited for Ava to finish getting ready for bed. It wasn't a question. "Yes," he admitted. "She's extraordinary. She's like her mother. Not just physically, she has the same spirit. And some things from me, too," Theo added, surprised by the pride in his own voice. "That stubborn streak when she wants to figure out how something works. The way she furrows her brow when she's focused. Helen smiled. I've noticed that, too. A comfortable silence settled between them, something that would have been impossible weeks ago. Move in with me, Theo said suddenly, surprising even himself with the words. Helen raised her eyebrows. What? My house is too big for one person. There's more than enough room. I can adapt everything for Ava, ramps, elevators, whatever is needed. Theo, that's a big step. You can't make decisions like that on impulse. It's not impulsive. I've been thinking about it for weeks. He walked over to the window, looking out at the small yard where Ava played during the day. This house has a lot of stairs. The bathroom is upstairs. It must be hard for you both. Helen didn't deny it. Her eyes revealed the fatigue of years carrying a child up and down stairs, adapting a house never designed for a wheelchair. Besides, Theo continued more gently, I want to be present. I want to make up for lost time. What about your job? Your life, Helen asked, worried. You built a world without room for a child or an elderly woman. Then I'll build a new one. The firmness in Theo's voice surprised them both. A better one. At that moment, Ava appeared in the living room doorway, already in pajamas, holding a storybook. Grandma, can you read to me? That one about the princess and the dragon. Then she noticed the serious expressions on the adults' faces. Is everything okay? Theo and Helen exchanged a glance. Then Helen smiled. Everything's fine, sweetheart. Actually, I think your dad has something to ask you. It was the first time she had referred to Theo as Ava's dad. The word echoed in the room, loaded with meaning. Theo approached Ava, kneeling so he was at her eye level. Ava, how would you feel about living in my house? You and Grandma Helen. The girl's eyes widened. In your big house? With the garden you showed me in the pictures? Yes, we'll make some changes so it's easier for you to move around, and you'd have your own room to decorate any way you want. Ava looked at Helen, then back at Theo. Her small face held an unusual seriousness for her age. Grandma would come too. Of course, we wouldn't separate you. And can I bring all my books and Mr. Bubbles? Mr. Bubbles was her goldfish in a small tank on her bedside table. All your books and definitely Mr. Bubbles. Ava considered the offer for a moment, then gave a decisive nod. Okay, we can go. The simplicity of her response made the adults smile. For Ava, it was that simple. A new adventure with the people she loved. Later, when Ava was asleep, Helen and Theo sat on the porch, watching the stars start to appear in the night sky. Are you sure about this? Helen asked again. It's a huge responsibility. A life-changing move. My life has already changed, Theo answered simply. From the moment I saw Ava at the cemetery, the choice was made. The path ahead, though unknown, felt clearer and brighter than any future he had ever imagined for himself. Theo Wilder's mansion was in an exclusive part of the city, surrounded by a large, well-maintained garden. The imposing architecture, 3 stories of modern or minimalist lines with floor-to-ceiling windows, usually impressed visitors. It was the kind of residence featured in design magazines, a perfect symbol of success and sophistication, and of loneliness. For the 5 years he lived there, Theo had never called it home. It was just the house, an address to return to after long hours at the firm. The elegantly expensive furniture was rarely used. The gourmet kitchen served only to heat up pre-made meals. The multiple guest rooms never hosted visitors. Now everything was about to change. We have a lot of work to do, Theo told the architect as they walked through the first floor. I need everything adapted in 2 weeks. The architect, an older man who had done other projects for Theo, seemed surprised. 2 weeks? For renovations of this size, money is no issue, Theo responded simply. Hire as many crews as necessary. The plan was ambitious. Ramps at the entrances, an elevator connecting the 3 floors, widening doorways, a complete renovation of 2 bathrooms for support rails, and accessible showers. The master bedroom on the 2nd floor, the sunniest room, would be transformed into a space for Ava. And I want that wall painted with a mural of flowers, Theo added, pointing to the main wall in the room. The architect made notes on his tablet. Any specific kind of flowers? Theo hesitated. Which flowers would Ava like? He realized with some sadness that he didn't yet know such simple details about his daughter. Something colorful and cheerful. I'll confirm the details later. That evening, when he visited Ava and Helen, he casually asked which flowers she liked best. Sunflowers, she answered without hesitation, because they're tall and always face the sun. The next day, the architect got detailed instructions. The wall should have a field of sunflowers from floor to ceiling, with some butterflies and bees among the blossoms. It should look like the window opens onto a real garden, Theo explained. The days that followed were full of noise, dust, and intense activity. Theo was deeply involved in the process, inspecting every detail, making adjustments, demanding changes when something wasn't right. For someone known for delegating tasks, his participation surprised everyone. A week before moving in, he took Ava and Helen to see the house. When the car stopped at the entrance, Ava's eyes went wide. "You live here?" she asked, astonished. "We live here," Theo corrected her with a smile. "Shall we go inside?" The new ramp at the main entrance was the first adaptation Ava noticed. Wide enough for her chair, with a gentle slope she could manage on her own. The smile she gave Theo as she went up unassisted made every penny worth it. Inside, the house was unrecognizable. The open spaces, once cold and impersonal, now had color and texture. The main living room had more comfortable sofas and a big coffee table perfect for games and puzzles. A brand new bookshelf displayed the growing collection of children's books Theo had been buying over the last few weeks. "And here," he said, guiding them to a discreet panel on the wall, "is the elevator. It'll take us to all floors of the house." Ava looked at the elevator in fascination. "Can I press the button?" "Sure, this one's to go up." When the doors opened on the second floor, Theo felt an unusual nervousness. "Your room is this way," he said, guiding Ava down the hallway. "I hope you like it." Opening the door, Ava's reaction was all he could have hoped for. Her eyes lit up at the mural of sunflowers, painted so realistically they seemed to sway in the breeze coming through the window. The new bed was at a perfect height for transferring from her wheelchair. A special adjustable desk stood near the window. Low shelves within her reach held books, games, and favorite toys that Theo had brought from the old house. Is all this for me?" Ava asked, still taking in the room. "All for you," Theo confirmed. "You can change anything you don't like." Ava shook her head slowly. "I don't want to change a thing. It's perfect." While Ava explored her room, touching the books and admiring every detail of the mural, Helen approached Theo. "You really thought of everything," she said, her voice husky with emotion. "I tried," Theo replied, "but I know I still have a lot to learn." Helen smiled, placing a hand on his arm. "We're all still learning, Theo." That's how it works. Helen's room was next door to Ava's, with a connecting door, Helen's specific request, still concerned about possible nightmares or nighttime needs for her granddaughter. The space was elegant and comfortable, with soft colors and a small reading nook by the window. "Now there's just one more thing," Theo announced, as they returned to the ground floor. He led them to a door opening onto the back of the house. "This part wasn't ready when we started, but it just got finished yesterday." Stepping outside, the backyard revealed a complete transformation. Wide, flat stone paths cut through the lawn, perfect for a wheelchair. Raised flower beds showed off a variety of blooms and aromatic herbs. In the center, a small fountain created the relaxing sound of running water. And there, in the sunniest corner of the garden, stood a small patch of real sunflowers, their golden faces turned toward the late afternoon light. "So you never forget to look toward the sun," Theo said softly to Ava. The following days were spent packing up and moving. Personal furniture, clothes, books, toys, memories. Helen and Ava's entire life was transferred to a new space. Theo oversaw everything, making sure each special item was handled with care. On the first official night in the new house, they sat together for dinner. The dining table, which Theo had previously used only to spread out documents when working at home, now served its original purpose. Helen had prepared the meal, insisting it was her contribution to this new chapter. Ava chattered about all her plans for her new room, the garden, the books she wanted to read. Her excitement was contagious. Helen added occasional comments. looking more at ease in the new environment. Theo watched it all with a strange feeling in his chest. That table had never witnessed such conversations. Those walls had never echoed with a child's laughter. For the first time since he bought that imposing mansion, Theo felt truly at home. It wasn't the address, nor the expensive furniture, nor the award-winning architecture that made it home. It was this: voices, laughter, shared plans, family. The house, once cold and empty, was finally coming to life. The days in the new house quickly turned into weeks. A routine formed: breakfast together before Theo left for the office, family dinners, bedtime stories. Helen managed the home during the day, while Ava attended a new school nearby, better equipped for children with special needs. For the first time in his adult life, Theo left work on time. His partners no longer commented on his new schedule. His determined look when he announced he needed more flexibility had been enough to silence any questions. One Sunday afternoon, while Helen rested, Theo and Ava were in the garden. He had set up a special table so she could plant her own seeds. Ava wore colorful gardening gloves, carefully placing sunflower seeds into pots. "So they'll be smaller than those," she explained, pointing to the tall sunflowers in the corner of the yard. "And I can keep them in my room." Theo watched, fascinated by the seriousness with which the girl approached the task. Her movements were precise, her small hands working carefully to avoid wasting any seeds. "You really like plants, huh?" he asked, helping her water the newly planted seeds. "Yeah, Mom taught me. She said plants are like people. They need love and patience to grow properly." Theo's heart squeezed, as it always did when Ava mentioned Lara. It was a blend of sadness at the loss and gratitude that Lara had been such a present mother, that her influence lived on in her daughter's memories. "Your mom was a very special woman," he said softly. Ava nodded, tamping the soil around one of the seeds. "She used to sing to me every night, and she knew stories about all the constellations." A comfortable silence stretched between them, broken only by distant birdsong and the rustling leaves. Theo realized that, despite weeks together, there was still so much he didn't know about Ava, about her life before him. "Ava," he began, choosing his words carefully, "can I ask you something?" "Sure," she replied, not lifting her gaze from her work. How did the accident happen? The one that made you need a wheelchair?" Ava's little hands froze for a moment. She kept her head down, eyes fixed on the flower pots in front of her. Theo immediately regretted asking. Was it too soon? "Too insensitive. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to," he added quickly. "No, it's okay," Ava replied, her voice small but firm. Finally, she looked up at Theo. "It happened when I was 3. She removed her gloves, placing them carefully on the table. Her now free hands began to fidget with the hem of her t-shirt, a gesture Theo recognized as a sign she was nervous. "We were in a car accident. Mom was taking me home from the hospital." "Hospital?" Theo asked gently. "She was getting treatment for the cancer." Ava pronounced the word cautiously, like something she had learned to say but didn't fully understand. "It was raining really hard. A car came really fast and hit ours." Her green eyes, so much like Lara's, grew distant, as if seeing something beyond the sunny garden. "Mom tried to protect me with her body. I remember her shouting my name and throwing herself over me." Theo felt his throat tighten. The image of Lara, ill, trying to protect their little daughter with her own body, was devastating. "I woke up in the hospital and she never came back." Ava's voice wavered slightly, but there were no tears in her eyes. Theo realized she had probably told this story before, multiple times, processing the trauma until she could speak without falling apart. "The doctors said I'd never walk again. My legs won't listen to my brain anymore." She said it with a simplicity that broke Theo's heart, so young to understand such permanent, definitive realities. But then, to his surprise, Ava smiled, a small but genuine smile. "Grandma said now I walk on wheels like a magical bicycle. That I can go faster than anyone if I want." Theo couldn't stop his own tears. The resilience of this child, her ability to find light even in the darkest circumstances, was astonishing. "Your grandma is a very wise woman," he managed to say. Sometimes I dream that I'm running, Ava continued, with surprising naturalness. Running really fast through a field of flowers. That's strange, because I don't remember what it's like to really run. I was too little when I still could. Theo moved closer, kneeling to meet her gaze. Ava, you're the strongest person I've ever met. Did you know that? She frowned, confused. But I'm small, and there are lots of things I can't do by myself. Strength isn't just about muscles or doing everything alone, Theo explained. It's about how we face hard things, how we keep going, even when it's painful. Ava thought about this for a moment. Like you when you found out about me. Grandma said it was hard for you to believe. Theo smiled, again amazed at her perceptiveness. Exactly, it was very hard for me. But you made it easier. You know, your smile, your courage. Ava reached out and, with surprising tenderness, wiped away a tear that was rolling down Theo's cheek. The gesture, so grown up from such a small child, made more tears fall. Don't be sad, she said. Mom always said remembering her should bring happiness, not sadness. And now I have you and Grandma, and a new house, and sunflowers. Theo took a shaky breath, trying to regain control. This child, his daughter, kept astonishing him with her wisdom and her capacity to truly live despite everything she had lost. You're right, he finally said. And you know what? Maybe we can plant more flowers here. Maybe an entire bed like in your room. Ava's face lit up. We can. All different colors. All the colors in the world. And can I help choose them? Of course. You'll be the garden's chief designer. Ava laughed, a sound Theo was quickly learning to cherish as one of the most precious in the world. She turned back to the pots of seeds, explaining exactly how much sun and water each would need. Watching her, Theo made a silent promise. He couldn't change the past. He couldn't bring back Ava's mother or her ability to walk, but he could ensure her future was as bright as possible, that she would never again lack love, security, or opportunities. From the kitchen window, unnoticed by them, Helen watched the scene. She saw Theo's tears, Ava's gentle touch, the serious conversation followed by smiles. When she saw them laughing together over the pots, she felt a peace she hadn't known in years. At last, Lara could rest. Her daughter was in good hands. Theo's decision to officially register Ava as his daughter came naturally. After 2 months living together, their bond grew stronger every day. The connection, initially fragile, was now solid, as real as the blood they shared. Helen first brought it up during dinner. Have you two thought about the name issue? She asked casually, pouring more juice for Ava. Theo frowned. What issue? The last name, Helen explained. Ava has her mother's last name, Matthews, but now that she's living with you, I can change my name, Ava interrupted, her green eyes wide at the possibility. Theo looked at her, realizing this was an important topic. Yes, you can if you want. We could add my last name to yours. I'd be Ava Matthews Wilder, she tested the words, smiling as she heard them. Exactly. Or just Ava Wilder, if you prefer. The girl pondered the options with seriousness. I think I want both. To have a bit of Mom and a bit of you. A lump formed in Theo's throat. That sensitivity, that deep understanding of the importance of names and what they represented. Extraordinary for someone so young. Ava Matthews Wilder, he agreed. It sounds perfect. But the process wasn't as simple as adding a name. As a lawyer, Theo knew the legal procedures required. Formal acknowledgement of paternity, then amending the birth certificate. Documents, signatures, bureaucracy. That same night, after Ava went to bed, Theo called Martin Greaves, a colleague at his firm specializing in family law. He explained the whole story, the late discovery of paternity, the DNA tests, the recent move. I want this done as soon as possible, he concluded. I want everything legally recognized, no doubts about my rights as her father. Martin, who had known Theo for years, couldn't hide his surprise. The Theo Wilder he knew was a man entirely devoted to his career, with no room for serious relationships, let alone children. I'll take care of it personally, he assured. Given the circumstances and the positive DNA test, we shouldn't face complications. Do you currently share guardianship with the maternal grandmother? Yes. Helen and I share the responsibilities. She's been incredible. Theo paused. I want her to remain a legal guardian with me. It's important for Ava. Understood. I'll prepare all the documentation. If everything goes smoothly, we can finalize it in 2 weeks. The bureaucracy went faster than expected, thanks to Theo's influence and Martin's efficiency. In 10 days, all the documents were ready for the final signatures at the registry office. On the morning of the big day, Ava was especially excited. She chose her favorite dress, blue with little white stars, and asked Helen for elaborate braids in her hair. I need to look pretty to become a Wilder, she explained seriously. Theo, who wore impeccable suits every day, spent extra time on his appearance that morning. He chose a blue tie to match Ava's dress, a detail she noticed immediately and approved with a bright smile. At the registry office, Martin waited by the entrance, a folder of documents in hand. He greeted Theo formally but bent down to talk to Ava at eye level. So you're the famous Ava. Your dad can't stop talking about you at the office. Ava looked at Theo, both surprised and delighted by the information. Really? Theo felt his ears heat up. It was true. Over the past months, any conversation at work eventually led him to mention Ava. Her school achievements, a clever remark she made, her progress in the piano lessons she had recently started. Maybe I talk about you a little bit, he admitted. The registry official greeted them with professional efficiency, but her expression softened upon seeing Ava in her wheelchair, looking around with curiosity. So we're formalizing the recognition of paternity and the name change, she said, checking the documents. Ava Matthews will now be Ava Matthews Wilder. Theo signed where indicated. Helen, as Ava's legal representative, also signed confirming her consent. The official stamped, recorded, then offered a special pen to Ava. You need to sign too, sweetie. Write your name here. Ava looked at the pen with awe. Carefully, she wrote her name in block letters, each character painstakingly formed, thanks to the handwriting lessons at school. When she finished, she admired her work proudly. All done, the official announced with a smile. Officially, your name is now Ava Matthews Wilder. Ava clapped her hands, her face glowing with happiness. Helen had tears in her eyes. Martin patted Theo on the shoulder, murmuring congratulations, before discreetly stepping away to give the family a private moment. As they left the office, the late morning sun warmed them. Theo pushed Ava's chair along the path to the car, while Helen walked beside them, holding the paperwork in a folder. Am I really yours now? Ava asked suddenly, turning her head to look at Theo. He stopped, went around and kneeled in front of her chair. Their eyes were now level. You always were, he answered simply. The paperwork just tells everyone else what we already knew. Ava smiled, reaching out her arms. Theo hugged her, feeling her small body against his, smelling the scent of her children's shampoo, her heart beating fast like a tiny bird. I love you, Dad, she whispered in his ear, the first time she'd used the word without hesitation or shyness. Theo felt something break free inside him, like a weight he'd carried for years, finally dissolving. I love you too, sweetheart, he replied, his voice unsteady. The days that followed brought a new lightness to the house. It was as though the official recognition had set something free in all of them. Helen seemed more at ease, as if a secret worry had finally been resolved. Ava talked constantly about her new name, practicing her signature on every scrap of paper, and Theo. Theo found a happiness he never thought possible. New routines formed naturally between father and daughter. Every morning before breakfast, Theo helped Ava with her physical therapy exercises, movements to keep the leg muscles active and prevent atrophy. He memorized each movement and the correct number of repetitions from her physical therapist. You're better than Dr. Patrick, Ava commented one morning, while Theo gently flexed her knee. He's always in a hurry. Well, I have a very special patient, Theo replied, tickling her belly and making her burst into laughter. Sundays became special breakfast day. Theo, who barely knew how to fry an egg before Ava came into his life, now experimented in the kitchen, creating pancakes in fun shapes, often more blob-like than the animals he intended. much to Ava's delight. "Is that an elephant or a cloud?" she asked, giggling. "It's clearly an elephant riding on a cloud," Theo would respond with mock dignity, prompting more laughter. Saturday afternoons became drawing time. Theo had no artistic talent, but he found he enjoyed coloring the outlines Ava created. They sat together at the big table, papers scattered everywhere, colored pencils and markers forming a rainbow of possibilities. Ava drew with intense concentration, her tongue poking out one corner of her mouth when she was especially focused. "This is you in court," she once explained, showing Theo a drawing of him with a black cape. "Fighting for people's rights." Theo smiled, touched by how she viewed his work, far more noble and heroic than the reality of corporate contracts and mergers. When the weather turned chilly, they introduced the hot chocolate ritual at dusk. Helen had a special recipe with cinnamon and a hint of vanilla. They sat on the covered porch, watching the rain or wind in the trees while warming their hands around steaming mugs. Ava recounted her school day, her new friends, what she'd learned. Sometimes she asked about Lara, little things, like her favorite color or whether she liked to sing. Theo and Helen answered honestly, keeping her memory alive without turning her into a sad ghost. Evenings were story time. Theo discovered a knack for inventing fantastic tales, adventures of princesses in wheelchairs who saved entire kingdoms, scientists who discovered distant planets, magical animals that secretly talked only to special children. "One more?" Ava always asked, even when her eyes were already heavy with sleep. "Tomorrow," Theo promised, kissing her forehead. "Dream of tonight's story, and tomorrow we'll have a new one." At work, colleagues noticed the change in Theo. The man who used to arrive first and leave last, who lived for cases and clients, now had strict limits. He left on time, refused meetings at certain hours, and left social events early. "I have a more important commitment," he'd simply say when asked. Some clients complained about his reduced availability. Theo wasn't fazed. He delegated more cases, trained his team to handle responsibilities he once monopolized. His efficiency, surprisingly, improved. Limited time forced him to be more focused and productive. One particularly stressful afternoon at the office, tangled with a complicated case and demanding clients, Theo received a call from Helen. "Ava wants to talk to you," she said. "It's nothing urgent. She's just excited to share something." Ava's voice burst on the line, excited. "Dad, guess what? I won the writing contest at school. The teacher said I'm getting a trophy on Friday. Can you come?" The day's stress instantly melted away. "I wouldn't miss it for the world," Theo promised. "What was the theme?" "My hero," Ava answered. "I wrote about you. I called you my heart lawyer." Something shattered and reassembled inside Theo at that moment. "Heart lawyer?" "Yeah, because you defend people in court, but you also take care of my heart." The teacher thought it was beautiful. She said it was very creative. When the call ended, Theo stood by the office window for a long moment. The sun was setting over the city, bathing the buildings in golden light. Below, people rushed home after a long day, carrying briefcases, talking on their phones, living their busy lives. He used to be one of them, always rushing, always thinking about the next case, the next achievement, living for a future that never truly arrived. Now, for the first time, he was present, fully present. "Heart lawyer," he murmured to himself, feeling both the weight and the lightness of that phrase. He had spent his life building a brilliant career, racking up wins in tough cases, impressing powerful clients. But his greatest case, greatest challenge, and greatest victory arrived in the form of a small girl in a wheelchair, holding a letter in a cemetery. That night, when he got home, Ava greeted him with his new title. "The heart lawyer is here," she announced gleefully, making Helen laugh. Theo grinned, kneeling down to kiss the top of her head. "How was the rest of your day, my award-winning writer?" As Ava eagerly narrated the day's events, Theo realized a simple, profound truth. Love can be complicated in its origins, complications and losses, but in its essence, in daily practice, love is surprisingly simple. It was being present. It was listening to school stories as if they were the most important news in the world. Because they were. It was making elephant cloud pancakes. It was helping with physical therapy. It was inventing bedtime stories. It was being called Heart Lawyer and realizing he had finally found his true purpose. And the biggest revelation, it was infinitely more rewarding than any professional triumph he had ever achieved. Saturdays at the zoo were usually crowded, but Theo had planned everything carefully. He bought tickets in advance, with special access for visitors with specific needs. They arrived right at opening time, when the place was still relatively empty, and the morning sun cast a golden light over the trees and enclosures. "Where are the lions?" was Ava's first question as soon as they passed the gates. Her braids bounced with excitement. Tied with colorful ribbons matching her red dress, Theo held a map of the zoo, unfolding it to show her. "The big cats are in this section," he explained, pointing to an area on the map. "But we'll start over here with the primates and make a circuit. That way, we won't miss anything." "I want to see everything," Ava said, her eyes shining with anticipation. "Absolutely everything," Theo smiled. "Theo, then let's begin." The zoo was well designed for accessibility, with flat, wide pathways making it easy to maneuver her chair. Ava insisted on pushing her own wheelchair most of the time, "to work my arms," like the therapist said. But Theo took over on slight slopes or when she got tired. In the primate section, they stopped in front of a family of gorillas. The large male sat impassively in the center of the enclosure, while a smaller female played with a baby. "He looks like you when you're thinking about a tough case," Ava commented, pointing to the serious-looking male gorilla. Theo laughed, pretending to be offended. "I'm insulted. I'm not that serious." "Yes, you are," Ava insisted, giggling. "Especially when you're reading documents with your glasses on the tip of your nose." Theo hadn't realized she'd been watching him so closely. It was both strange and wonderful to be seen through a child's eyes, details he didn't even notice about himself. She captured perfectly. At the next section, the elephants made a strong impression on Ava. She fell silent for a long time, observing a large female gently guiding her calf with her trunk. "They never forget," she said quietly at last. "I read that in a book. Elephants have really good memories." "They do," Theo confirmed. "Like me," she continued thoughtfully. "I still remember Mom, how she smelled, her voice. Even though I was really little when she went away," Theo felt that familiar squeeze in his chest. These observations popped up sometimes, catching him off guard. Insights into how Ava's mind processed her loss, how she kept Lara alive in her memories. "That's a gift," he said softly, "to remember her." Ava nodded. "It's like a treasure nobody can see, but it's always with me." Then, typically abrupt, she changed the subject. "Can we see the penguins now?" The penguins were a total hit. Ava giggled non-stop, watching them slip into the water and waddle awkwardly on land. One of the keepers was feeding them and came over to the fence to talk to the kids. "This one is May," she explained, pointing to a particularly eager penguin. "He's our newest resident, arrived from an aquarium in the south." "Is he alone?" Ava asked, concerned. "He was a bit lost at first," the keeper admitted, "but the other penguins took him in quickly. See how that older one always swims near him?" Ava observed, fascinated, the older penguin that seemed to be looking out for the newcomer. "Just like a family," she murmured. They had lunch at the zoo restaurant, which had tables specially designed to accommodate wheelchairs. Ava devoured her sandwich while telling Theo about a school project on endangered animals. "I chose the northern white rhino," she explained between bites. "There are only 2 left in the whole world, and they're both female, so they can't have babies." "That is really sad," Theo agreed. "That's why zoos are important," she continued, with the seriousness of someone explaining something crucial. "They protect animals and educate people." "My teacher said we can't protect what we don't know," Theo smiled. "Your teacher is very wise." The afternoon went on with visits to the giraffes. What's it like to see the world from up there? The reptiles? They're not scary, just different. And finally, the much-anticipated lions. The big cat lounged lazily under the afternoon sun, his golden mane shining. Occasionally, he yawned, revealing impressive teeth that made nearby children squeal with excitement. "He really is the king," Ava observed, awed. "He doesn't have to do anything to be respected. He just exists. Theo pondered her words. There was a simple wisdom there about presence, about being instead of doing. Something he himself was learning slowly after a lifetime defined by achievements, not by who he was. The hours went by quickly. Before they knew it, they were at the last enclosures. Ava was clearly tired but refused to admit it. Her eyes no longer lit up with the same energy, and her questions came less frequently. "I think we deserve ice cream to wrap up the day," Theo suggested, pointing to a shop near the exit. Ava's tired face brightened instantly. "Chocolate with sprinkles. Whatever you want." They sat at a shady table, Ava savoring her chocolate ice cream covered in colorful sprinkles, Theo enjoying a simple vanilla cone. The zoo was beginning to empty out, families heading to the exit after a busy day. "Thank you for the outing," Ava said, chocolate at the corner of her mouth. Theo grabbed a napkin and gently wiped her face. "It was fun, wasn't it? Which animal did you like the most?" Ava considered the question seriously, as she did everything. "I liked the elephants, and the penguins, and the lions." She paused. "Actually, I liked them all." Theo laughed. "That's not an answer." "But it's true," she insisted, laughing too. Then she grew serious again, staring at her half-melted ice cream. "You know, I've never been to a zoo before." "Never," she shook her head. "Mom wanted to take me, but then she got sick. And after that..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Theo felt that familiar mix of sadness and gratitude, sadness for the experiences Lara never got to share with her daughter, gratitude that he could be there to provide them now. Ava looked at him, her green eyes suddenly shy beneath her long lashes. She bit her lip, as she often did when gathering the courage to say something important. "Dad," she began, the words still sounding new and precious from her. "Today was the best day of my life." Theo froze, his spoon suspended halfway to his mouth. Those simple words, spoken with such sincerity, cut through all his defenses like nothing had before. The best day in her entire life. Because of him. He felt something warm and liquid rise in his chest, climb into his throat, press behind his eyes. He tried to speak but found no words. Instead, he put down the spoon, reached across the table, and gently took Ava's small hand in his. He lowered his head, trying to hide the tears now rolling freely down his face. "Don't be sad," Ava said, concerned, squeezing his hand. Theo shook his head, still unable to look up. "It's not sadness," he finally managed to say, voice hoarse. "It's love. Love makes you cry?" "Sometimes," he answered, finally looking at her. "When it's too big to fit inside." Ava considered that, then smiled, a smile that lit up everything around her. "Then I'm almost crying too, because I love you as big as the whole zoo." "No," she corrected herself quickly, "the whole city. No, the whole world." Theo laughed through his tears, a laughter that freed something inside him. "How about we finish our ice cream," he suggested, wiping his eyes, "and then stop by the souvenir shop to pick something to remember the best day." "Can we get a stuffed lion?" Ava asked hopefully. "A lion, an elephant, a penguin, anything you want." As they finished their ice cream in the late afternoon sun, Theo reflected on how unpredictable life could be. Less than a year ago, he was alone in that empty mansion, drowning in work to avoid feeling the emptiness. Now he was here, with chocolate stains on his jacket, learning about elephants and penguins, crying at a zoo ice cream stand. And in some completely unexpected way, living the best day of his life, too. Sunday afternoon was perfect. Not too hot, not too cold. The sky was a nearly impossible shade of blue, with a few white clouds drifting lazily. The garden, now fully adapted for Ava, showed the first signs of spring. The sunflowers they had planted together were sprouting, still small, but already faithfully turning toward the sun. Helen Matthews watched everything from the living room window. Her knitting rested in her lap, forgotten. She was completely absorbed in the scene unfolding outside. Theo was running across the lawn, pushing Ava's wheelchair in ever faster circles. The specially reinforced outdoor chair glided smoothly along the paved path. "Faster!" Ava shouted between giggles. "We're almost passing car number 7. "Hang on, driver!" Theo shouted back, playing along. Dangerous curve ahead! He made a tight turn, prompting more squeals of excitement from Ava. Her hair flew behind her, her hands gripping the armrests, her face shone with pure joy. Helen smiled, her eyes growing misty. These were not tears of sorrow, but something more complex, a blend of gratitude, relief, and the specific kind of happiness that arrives after a long period of worry. For so long, Helen had carried the weight of uncertainty. Throughout Lara's years raising Ava alone, then during Ava's illness, and finally after Lara's passing, the responsibility of caring for a child with special needs at 60 had been daunting. And always there had been that lingering doubt. Was she doing enough? Would Ava have everything she needed to grow up happy? And now, watching this simple yet profound moment, a father playing with his daughter in the garden, Helen felt an old knot unraveling inside her. Theo seemed so different from the man she'd known years ago, back when he and Lara were still married, that Theo rarely smiled, always checked his watch, always mentally somewhere else. This Theo was fully present, his expensive clothes slightly wrinkled and grass-stained, his face flushed from running, his smile as wide as Ava's. Sensing her gaze, Theo looked toward the window and waved. Ava followed his look and waved enthusiastically at her grandmother. Helen waved back, her heart overflowing. Soon after, Helen heard the back door open and their voices coming into the house. Ava was still laughing, telling Theo how they had won the race. "Grandma, did you see?" "We won the race," Ava exclaimed, entering the living room with Theo just behind her. "I saw, dear. You two were really flying. Dad said maybe we can go see a real race someday, just to watch it, of course." "Sounds fun," Helen replied, smiling at her granddaughter's excitement. "I'm so thirsty," Ava continued. "Can I get some juice from the fridge?" "Sure," Theo answered. "Want me to help?" "No need, I can do it myself." Ava maneuvered her chair expertly toward the kitchen. "Do you want some too?" "That would be great," Helen said. Once Ava was out of earshot, Helen motioned for Theo to sit in the armchair beside hers. He was still breathing heavily from the race, his usually neat hair disheveled, grass stains on his pants. "Theo," she began softly, so Ava wouldn't hear, "I knew you'd make a good father." He looked surprised by the sudden comment. "How could you know? Even I didn't know." Helen smiled gently. "A mother knows these things." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "My daughter often complained that you were always absent and distant, but I can see you've changed." Theo's eyes dropped briefly, guilt flashing across his face. Helen knew he still carried the weight of past mistakes, of lost time. "Lara was right about me back then," he admitted. "I was lost. I thought success was all that mattered. And now?" His gaze shifted toward the kitchen where they could hear Ava humming as she prepared their drinks. A soft smile touched his lips. "Now I know what truly matters." Helen placed her hand over his, gently. Her hands, marked by time and arthritis, contrasted with his stronger, younger ones. But there was a connection, a shared understanding, a common purpose. "I feel at peace," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "because she's with you, because now she has a father." Theo lowered his gaze, visibly moved. He squeezed Helen's hand gently, unable to find adequate words. He didn't need to. The silence between them said everything. The moment was interrupted by the sound of Ava's chair returning from the kitchen. She skillfully balanced a small tray with 3 glasses of orange juice. "I didn't spill anything," she announced proudly, rolling closer. Then she noticed the atmosphere in the room, her grandmother's moist eyes, Theo's emotional expression. "Is everyone okay?" "We're perfectly fine, dear," Helen replied. "We were just having an important conversation." "About what?" Ava asked, curiosity in her voice as always. "About how lucky we are," Theo said, recovering himself. "Because we're a family." Ava's eyes lit up. "We really are a family, right? With a home and everything." "Yes, we are," Helen confirmed, extending an arm to include her granddaughter in the moment. Ava rolled her chair closer and, without hesitation, leaned forward to hug them both, one arm around Theo, one around Helen. For a moment, the 3 of them stayed that way, forming a perfect circle. The afternoon sun poured through the windows, creating golden patterns on the living room floor. Outside, the young sunflowers kept turning, faithfully following the light. Inside, time seemed to stand still in that embrace. Helen closed her eyes and inhaled deeply. She could feel Lara's presence somehow, not as a sad ghost, but as a silent blessing, an approval. Her daughter had always wanted this, for Ava to have a complete family, a present father, a safe home. Now, at last, that wish was fulfilled. As they broke the hug, Ava carefully handed out the glasses of juice, making a small ceremony of the task. "Let's make a toast," she suggested, "like in the movies." "And what shall we toast to?" Theo asked, joining her playfulness. Ava thought for a moment, then raised her glass solemnly. "To our family." "To our family," Theo and Helen echoed in unison, tapping their glasses against hers. The sound of the toast echoed in the sunny room, a simple sound, but one that marked the beginning of something precious and lasting. That afternoon remained a cherished memory, the moment they truly became a family, not out of obligation, not by circumstance, but by choice, by love. A real home, finally complete. Morning came earlier than usual at the Wilder house. It was still dark when the light in Ava's room switched on. Helen was already up, carefully organizing everything with the attention of someone who understands how important rituals can be for children. The new uniform lay neatly on the chair, navy blue skirt, white blouse, and a sweater with the embroidered crest of Wellington School. Next to it, the already packed backpack with brand new notebooks, colored pencils arranged by shade, a pencil case with colorful pens, all precisely organized the way Ava insisted on doing the night before. "Did you sleep well?" Helen asked, helping her granddaughter sit on the edge of the bed. Ava shook her head. "I dreamed I forgot how to talk, and nobody understood me." Helen smiled sympathetically. "Those kinds of dreams are normal when you're nervous about something new." She began to help her with her socks. "Feeling anxious?" "A little," Ava admitted, biting her lower lip, a gesture she'd inherited from Lara. "What if the other kids don't like me? What if they think my chair is weird?" Helen tied the laces of her new shoes perfectly. "They'll think you're amazing because you are. And about the chair." She paused, meeting Ava's eyes. "Remember what we always say. It's just a different way of getting around," Ava recited, as though it were a well-learned lesson. "Exactly. Plus, you can show them those awesome moves you do in the hallway." Ava smiled, the first genuine smile of the morning. Downstairs, Theo was making breakfast with exaggerated focus. Star-shaped pancakes, freshly squeezed orange juice, fruit cut into fun shapes. As though the perfect breakfast could somehow guarantee a perfect first day for Ava at her new school. He was more nervous than she was, though he tried not to show it. Over the last few weeks, he had visited the school multiple times, checking every detail, the accessibility of classrooms, the teachers' training, the emergency protocols. Wellington School had been chosen after a thorough search, the best in the area for children with special needs, recognized nationwide for its inclusion program, with a staff that had proven experience. Even so, the anxiety remained. As a lawyer, Theo was used to controlling variables, predicting possibilities, preparing for every contingency. But sending his daughter into a new environment, full of unknown kids, was completely out of his control. "Special breakfast," he announced, as Ava and Helen entered the kitchen. Ava, in her new uniform, looked at the elaborately set table and smiled. "The pancakes have eyes?" "And smiling mouths," Theo confirmed. "Happy pancakes for a happy first day." Helen shared a knowing look with him over Ava's head. They were both trying to keep the mood light, masking their own worries so as not to fuel hers. Breakfast was quieter than usual, each person lost in their thoughts. Ava ate little, pushing the smiling pancakes around her plate. Theo checked the clock repeatedly, calculating the travel time, wanting to arrive neither too early nor too late. "Remember what we agreed," he said, helping Ava into the car. "If there's any problem, the school has my number and Grandma's. Just let the teacher know." Ava nodded seriously. "I know your phone number by heart and Grandma's. And I know you're the most important lawyer in the city, so they'll answer quickly." Theo laughed, surprised by her logic. "It's not exactly how it works, but sure, they'll answer quickly because you're the most important student at that school. Helen adjusted Ava's backpack on her lap. Ready to make new friends? I think so, Ava replied, not fully convinced. Then, as if remembering something, she asked, Grandma, will you be home when I get back? Of course, my love. I'll make your favorite cookies for snack time. The little wrinkle of worry between Ava's eyebrows relaxed a bit. The drive to school had never felt so short. In minutes, they were at Wellington School's large red gate, where other children and parents converged for the start of the academic year. Some kids cried, clinging to their parents. Others ran off happily to greet friends. Teachers welcomed students with warm smiles. The principal, Mrs. Martinez, approached as soon as she spotted them. She already knew Ava from previous visits. Good morning, Wilder family, she greeted warmly. Especially good morning to you, Ava. I'm so happy to see you on your first day, ready to meet your class and new friends. Ava looked at the principal, then at the busy courtyard filled with kids, some glancing curiously their way. Almost unconsciously, her hand sought Theo's, gripping it tightly. Could we have a minute? Theo asked the principal. Mrs. Martinez smiled understandingly. Of course. I'll be right over there whenever you're ready. Take your time. When they were alone, Theo kneeled to meet Ava's gaze. Hey, it's all going to be okay, all right? Remember what we talked about. Being new at school is hard for everyone, but it passes. What if they laugh at my chair? Ava asked, voicing her biggest fear. If anyone laughs or says something hurtful, you tell me. We'll handle it together. He held her small hands in his. But you know what? I think you'll be surprised. Kids are curious. They'll ask questions, but usually they accept differences much faster than adults do. Ava nodded, her green eyes locked on his, absorbing his words. What if someone asks about my mum? The question caught Theo off guard. It was a possibility he hadn't considered. You answer whatever you feel comfortable sharing. You can say she's in heaven, or just say you don't want to talk about it yet. Whatever your heart tells you. Maybe I'll say I have the best dad in the world, and he's my heart lawyer. A small smile appeared on her face. And that grandma makes the best cookies ever. Theo smiled, warmth flooding him at those simple words. Perfect. He gently adjusted the ribbon in her hair. And remember, you're amazing, Ava Matthews Wilder, smart, funny, and brave. Anyone who doesn't want to be your friend is missing out on an awesome friendship. Her smile grew. Really? Absolutely. He stood, offering his hand. Ready? Ava took a deep breath, as she'd been taught to do when anxious. Ready. Together they walked toward Mrs. Martinez, who waited patiently. She began explaining how the day would go, the schedule, the planned activities. She mentioned that Ava's teacher, Miss Collins, had prepared a special welcome activity. Crossing the courtyard, some children glanced curiously at Ava in her wheelchair. A girl with curly hair waved shyly, and to Theo's surprise, Ava waved back. Reaching the spot where parents usually said goodbye, Ava squeezed Theo's hand again. Her eyes, now tearful, searched his. Will you wait for me? She asked, her voice small and vulnerable. Theo felt a lump in his throat. In that moment, all the meetings, obligations, and duties filling his schedule felt utterly irrelevant. Only one thing mattered. Always, he replied, meaning it with all his heart. Ava smiled, seemingly reassured by his response. She leaned forward in her chair to hug him tightly, her small arms wrapped around his neck. I love you, Dad. I love you too, my star. Then, with one last look, he let her go. He watched as Mrs. Martinez led Ava across the courtyard toward the classroom. He saw other kids approach her. Curious, he saw the first shy smile Ava gave the curly-haired girl. He remained there, motionless, long after the gate closed, feeling, for the first time, what millions of parents feel in that moment: pride and apprehension, the certainty that nothing would be the same again. His daughter was taking another step into the world, a step away from him yet carrying him along. Always, he whispered softly, a promise to Ava and to himself. Life found its rhythm in the Wilder household. 3 months had passed since Ava's first day at school, and she already had friends, took part in class activities, and came home daily with lively stories about what she learned. Theo found a balance between work and family, delegating more cases and arriving home in time for dinner. The house, once a cold and impersonal space, now overflowed with life. And at the heart of this transformation was Helen. Quiet and efficient, she kept everything running, from punctual meals to Ava's perfectly organized clothes, from the medication she needed regularly to helping her with homework. While Theo and Ava built their relationship, Helen was the anchor providing the stability they needed. Which was why the world seemed to crumble when they found her collapsed in the kitchen that Wednesday morning. Theo was the first to reach her. He'd heard the sound of the fall, a dull thump followed by the tinkle of breaking glass. He ran downstairs, still in his pajamas, heart pounding. Helen was on the floor, conscious but disoriented, a broken cup a few inches from her hand. Her face was pale, a thin film of sweat on her forehead. "Helen, what happened?" He knelt beside her, quickly checking for any visible injuries. "I'm fine," she muttered, trying to sit up. "Just a little dizzy spell. It'll pass." But when she tried to stand, her legs gave out again. Theo caught her by the shoulders, preventing another fall. "You're not fine." "I'm calling an ambulance." "Don't overreact," Helen protested weakly. "I don't want to scare Ava." But the girl was already there, her wheelchair stopped at the kitchen entrance, eyes wide with fear. "Grandma!" Her small, trembling voice broke Theo's heart. "What happened to Grandma?" "She's not feeling well, sweetheart. So I'm calling a doctor." While Theo called emergency services, Ava rolled up to Helen, who was now sitting on the floor, propped against a kitchen cabinet. With surprising gentleness, the girl took her grandmother's hand in hers. "You'll be okay, Grandma," she said, echoing the words she'd heard from adults so many times. "The doctors will make you better." Helen managed a faint smile, squeezing Ava's hand. "Of course they will, my love. Don't worry." But there was something in her eyes, a shadow, a knowledge. Theo recognized immediately. Helen knew it wasn't just a passing dizzy spell. The ambulance arrived in 10 minutes that felt like hours. The paramedics were efficient and kind, explaining each step to Ava, who watched them with scared, attentive eyes. As they lifted Helen onto the gurney, she clutched Theo's hand. "Take care of her," she whispered. "Don't let her see if it's, you know." Theo nodded, throat tight. "I'll go with you in the ambulance." "No," Helen insisted firmly. "Stay with Ava. She needs you now. Call the neighbor to stay with her, then you two come to the hospital." Theo hesitated, torn between two obligations, but Helen's look left no room for argument. He nodded again. The next few moments were a blur of activity. He phoned Mrs. Patel, their trusted neighbor who sometimes watched Ava. Helped Ava get dressed quickly, trying to maintain a calm he didn't feel. Within half an hour, they were on their way to the hospital. In the car, Ava was unusually quiet, staring out the window. "Grandma's going to be fine," Theo said, more to himself than to her. "The doctors will take care of her, like they took care of Mom." Ava's question came low, almost a whisper. Theo felt something cold and heavy settle in his stomach. How to answer that? How to promise anything he couldn't guarantee? "Every situation is different, Ava. Your grandma is strong and—" "Mom was strong too," Ava interrupted, her voice trembling. "She fought so hard. Grandma always told me that. But she still went away." The traffic light turned red, giving Theo a moment to compose himself. He turned to look directly at Ava. "I'm scared too," he admitted. "But we can't assume the worst before we know what's happening. We'll be by Grandma's side no matter what." Ava nodded, but Theo could see she was far from reassured. At the hospital, they were directed to the emergency waiting area. It was crowded, people with the same anxious expressions, some crying quietly, others pacing. Theo filled out forms, spoke with the receptionist, all while trying to keep Ava calm. An hour passed. Then 2. Finally, a tired-looking doctor called Helen's name. Theo pushed Ava's chair up to him. "Mr. Wilder, I'm Dr. Reynolds. Your mother-in-law is stable for now." "What happened to her?" The doctor glanced briefly at Ava, hesitating almost imperceptibly. "Could we talk over there?" He pointed to a quieter corner. "Ava, stay here for a moment, okay? I'll be right back." "No." Ava's voice rose, drawing eyes. "I want to know too. She's my grandma." Theo exchanged a look with the doctor, who nodded slightly. "All right, we'll go together." In that quieter spot, Dr. Reynolds explained the situation. Helen had suffered an ischemic stroke. A clot partially blocked blood flow to a part of her brain. They'd intervened in time to prevent severe permanent damage. But we also found other complications during the tests, the doctor continued, his voice professional yet compassionate. "Her blood pressure is consistently high, and there are signs of congestive heart failure. We also noticed some abnormalities in her liver that need further investigation." Theo tried to process it all. "What does that mean exactly? Will she recover?" The doctor chose his words carefully. "We can stabilize her condition, manage symptoms with medication. But given her age and these combined issues, we're talking about ongoing care, not a cure." "Is she going to die?" Ava's voice sliced through the conversation like a blade. Dr. Reynolds looked at the girl, his expression softening. "Not immediately, no. But your grandma will need special care from now on." Ava lowered her head, her hands clutching her wheelchair armrest so tightly her knuckles whitened. When she lifted her face, tears were rolling silently down her cheeks. "I don't want to lose Grandma too," she said, her voice breaking into a sob. "I can't lose anyone else." Theo felt his own heart breaking. He knelt in front of her chair, holding her small, trembling hands. "Ava, look at me," he said gently. When her eyes met his, he continued, "We'll do everything we can for Grandma, the best doctors, the best care. And no matter what happens, you will never be alone. Never. Understand? You have me now." "Promise?" she asked, her voice tiny. "I promise with all my heart." Ava hugged him then tightly, as though he were an anchor in a storm. Theo felt her tears dampen his shirt, and he let his own tears fall too. The following days tested everyone's endurance. Helen remained in the hospital for a battery of tests, and so the doctors could adjust her medication. Theo completely reshuffled his schedule, working remotely whenever possible, delegating cases, cancelling meetings. He split his time between the hospital, Ava's school, and the now oddly empty house without Helen. Ava, for her part, adopted a surprising determination. She made cards, drawings, and paper flowers to decorate her grandmother's hospital room. She asked to research Helen's medical conditions, wanting to understand. During visits, she kept the conversation going, sharing stories from school, reading books aloud, determined not to show her fear, but at night, alone with Theo, her guard dropped. The questions came, about death, about loss, about being alone. Questions with no easy answers. "If Grandma goes to heaven like Mom, who's going to take care of us?" she asked one night, as Theo tucked her in. "I'll take care of you and you'll take care of me," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "And Grandma's not going to heaven anytime soon. She still has a lot to do here." "Like what?" "Like watching you grow up. Teaching you how to bake that special chocolate cake only she knows how to make. Helping me not burn pancakes." That won a small smile from Ava. "You do burn pancakes." After 2 weeks, the medical team finally agreed that Helen could continue treatment at home, with regular nursing and physical therapy visits. Palliative care, though they avoided that term around Ava. Theo transformed the office on the first floor into Helen's bedroom, so she wouldn't need to climb stairs. The day she returned home felt like a celebration. Ava had prepared a welcome for days. Drawings covered the walls of the new room, a paper flower wreath hung on the door, and her stuffed animals were strategically placed on the bed to keep Grandma company. When the ambulance arrived with Helen, Ava waited at the door wearing her favorite dress, her hair styled with matching bows. Theo realized she wanted to appear strong and happy for her grandmother, hiding the fear she still felt. Helen looked frailer, thinner, but her eyes lit up when she saw her granddaughter waiting. The paramedics helped her into a wheelchair, temporarily. They all insisted until she was fully stronger. Look at us, Helen joked when she was side by side with Ava, both in wheelchairs. We can race each other in the hallway now. Ava smiled, tears shining in her eyes. When the paramedics left and Theo went to sign some papers, she approached her grandmother, letting the cheerful mask fall away. I missed you so much, Grandma, she said, her voice trembling. The house wasn't the same without you. Helen took Ava's hand, her own eyes brimming with tears. I missed you too, my love, more than you can imagine. Theo returned, completing the circle. They stood there, the three of them, in the entrance hall, each at a different stage of life, each carrying fears and hopes, united by ties stronger than blood. 3 generations under one roof. A family united not by obligation or circumstance, but by choice, by love. Welcome home, Helen, Theo said softly. Thank you for bringing me home, she replied, glancing around with a mixture of emotion and gratitude. To our home. In that moment, despite the uncertainties still hovering over them, one certainty stood unshakable. They would face whatever came, together, like a family, as they should have all along. The Wilder house had never looked so colorful. Purple and gold balloons, Ava's favorite colors, floated against the living room ceiling, tied in clusters placed all around. Shimmering banners spelling Happy Birthday stretched across the walls. On the dining table, a 3-tiered cake was a work of art covered in blue frosting and little sugar sunflowers. It was Ava's birthday, 7 years old, her first birthday with her dad. Theo had never organized a children's party before, but he made up for the lack of experience with dedication. In the past few weeks, he had researched party themes, entertainers, decorations, and suitable gifts like he would a legal case, thoroughly. Helen, still fragile but determined to help, handled the menu, supervising the kitchen preparations from her chair. Now the house was full. Ava's new friends from school ran around the garden, playing games led by an entertainer dressed as a princess astronaut, a mashup that made sense only to 7-year-olds and delighted Ava completely. Some of Theo's colleagues gathered on the veranda, while parents of Ava's friends stood around the snack table. In the living room, Helen sat in her special armchair, surrounded by 2 longtime friends who visited often since she came home from the hospital. Her face, though weary, lit up each time she heard Ava's laughter from the garden. Theo moved among the groups, checking everyone's comfort and making sure nothing was missing. But his eyes kept returning to Ava, his daughter smiling in her wheelchair decorated with colorful ribbons, at the center of a circle of children who listened in admiration as she told some animated story. She looked so happy, Rachel, his assistant, remarked. She had become a frequent presence at the house after Helen's hospitalization. You've done a wonderful job, Theo. He shook his head, smiling. Ava does the heavy lifting. She has a gift for finding joy in everything. Just like her mother, Helen added, having overheard them. Lara always found the bright side, even in the hardest times. A comfortable silence fell among them, filled by the lively buzz of the party around. It no longer hurt to talk about Lara. She'd become a gentle presence, an honored memory, a legacy living on through Ava. When it was time to sing Happy Birthday, everyone gathered around the table. Ava, wearing a sky-blue dress and a flower crown round, seemed to glow. Her green eyes, Lara's eyes, sparkled with excitement as she watched Theo light the 7 candles. Voices rose in the familiar tune, echoing through the house with contagious joy. Ava squeezed her eyes shut while making her wish, then blew all the candles out at once, drawing enthusiastic applause. As the cake was cut and served, Theo tapped his juice glass. There was no alcohol at a kid's party, lightly with a spoon, catching everyone's attention. I'd like to propose a toast, he announced, voice slightly thick with emotion. To our birthday girl, my daughter, Ava. Glasses were raised all around. A year ago, Theo continued, I was a different man. I thought I had everything, but I was wrong. I thought I had everything was wrong. He looked directly at Ava. But having everything is actually this. Our family, our home, this life we've built together. The room fell silent, wrapped in the sincerity of his words. To Ava, he concluded, raising his glass higher, who brought light to our lives. To Ava, the crowd echoed in unison. The girl beamed, her cheeks pink with joy. When the guests returned to their conversations, she maneuvered her chair to where Theo and Helen stood, positioning herself between them. She extended her hands, one to each of them. They took them automatically, forming a small circle. "Do you want to know what I wished for when I blew the candles?" Ava asked, her gaze moving between them. "You can't tell," Helen teased gently, smiling, "or it won't come true." "This wish doesn't need magic to come true," Ava responded with the peculiar wisdom that sometimes surprised the adults. "I wished that we'd stay together like this, always." She squeezed the hands she held, then quietly added, "Mom must be happy I'm with you both." Theo felt a lump in his throat. Helen discreetly wiped away a tear. "I'm sure she is, my love," Helen replied, her voice trembling. Ava smiled, satisfied. "We're a family now, complete, at peace." In that moment, surrounded by the happy clamor of the party, joined in that small circle of hands, Theo felt a profound certainty settle in his heart. The path that led them here was unlikely, marked by loss and discovery, pain and joy. But each step, each decision, each moment, since that surprising encounter at the cemetery, had brought them exactly where they needed to be. A family, complete, at peace.